All right, back again, Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Tuesday of what week is it? It's week 8, right? So that's the NFL season's halfway done. The fantasy season is more than halfway done, although for some of us it is all the way done. As we learned last week, I won't be focusing too much on what happened over the weekend. More so, this is a recap of one of our league's seminal events, Tradeapalooza, which, as we all know, took place last Thursday. But in order to do that, I'm actually going to open up the old mailbag here a little bit early. So this question came in from Ariel, actually, prior to Tradeapalooza. First question was predictions for tonight. Best trade, worst trade, most irrelevant trade. So I'll get into that. And then the second question, on a scale of 1 to The Departed, how much do you hate yourself for trading for a pussy packer? Well, Ariel addressed the second part here briefly. Yes, I'm quite upset. I wouldn't say I'm Rifkin level upset, but I'm quite upset about the way my Demaryius Thomas for Eddie Lacy trade has worked out. Tradeapalooza started a little bit early for me. Demaryius T is a great player, but was an extra piece for me the way my roster was constructed, and thought at that time I could really swing him for, a running back that would help shore up my second running back spot, which has been pretty ugly. It turned out that acquiring Eddie Lacy was a huge mistake because he was sort of hurt at the time. No one knew it would be this bad, but he, after playing one more game, ended up getting put on IR and is out for the season. So I basically wasted Demaryius Thomas, and it is an extra kind of twist of the knife, the fact that it was Eddie Lacy, someone that I dislike. And, honestly, talked to Smith about it. I really wasn't very thrilled about acquiring him the entirety of the process. In fact, I was very anti Eddie Lacy, even as I was confirming the trade. So it didn't work out great. All right, on to the first part of your question. Using your sort of categories to recap Tradeapalooza, I put things into a couple different key buckets here: best trade, worst trade, and most irrelevant. Starting with the best, actually, Ariel, this is one you were involved with. I thought Denenberg trading David Carr and Brandon Cooks to Ariel for Aaron Rodgers and Quincy Enunwa and 18 auction. This is kind of the rarely seen first place sellout move. It's kind of a strange trade. On one hand, Denenberg is getting $18 cash and giving up Brandon Cooks, who is pretty good. But on the other hand, he's giving away David Carr to get Aaron Rodgers. So what's it going to be, D? Are you building for next year, or are you looking to keep your hot streak going in 2016? I don't know. Either way, I think Ariel got the better end of this trade. David Carr has been solid, and Brandon Cooks is great. As I touched on earlier, we all know Aaron Rodgers is a bitch. Anyone in the Packers sucks. All right, another one of the best trades. I thought this was a great one, obviously, as I was involved in it, but it was me getting Michael Thomas and giving Des Bryant to Oaks. The contingency here was that for every 15 points that Des scores for the remainder of the year, Oaks adds one more auction dollar to the trade. Final balance is determined when Oaks' season is over, and the total amount is capped at 15. So, realistically, Dez is probably only going to score 60 or 70 points for the remainder of the season, maybe a little bit higher. So, frankly, the best case scenario for me is walking away with an extra 4 or 5 auction. But honestly, Michael Thomas was the target for me. In my mind, in this league, the way it's constructed, Michael Thomas has significantly more value than Des Bryant. I've hated owning Dez. Dez has been terrible. He was my big target in the draft, and I got him, and he's been hurt. But even before the injury, Dak Prescott does not throw deep. Him and Dez don't have a very good relationship, I don't think. They're kind of a run-first team, obviously. And then, to my first point, Michael Thomas is great. Michael Thomas has been, he's been lapping Dez as far as production this year, and he's the clear-cut number 2 receiver and one of the best offenses in the NFL. So, and he's also, obviously the most important part. Oaks drafted him for $1, which I don't know where Oaks got it from, but that was some pretty good intel at the beginning of the year. He's to keep him for $11 is a great deal. He's going to be a great receiver next year, and he's already good this year. So regardless of what Krause has to tell you, I thought this was a pretty good trade. All right, another one of the best trades of the day I thought was coworker Dan getting Ryan Matthews and giving up $5, Krause getting C.J. Anderson and giving up $2, and then Bootsy getting paid out at $7. I'm all about contingencies, obviously, in three-way trades. I love seeing confusing shit go down. I think it's excellent, and the more of this, the better. Let's start working on four-way trades for next year. However, if I'm Bootsy in this situation, I probably would have held out for a little bit more cash. It's still a good deal. Dan is obviously paying to get Ryan Matthews, who kind of has some upside, but he's been pretty shitty, so I don't really like Dan's end of the bargain. Krause made out like a bandit here. He paid to get C.J. Anderson, who racked up some big points over the weekend and has been one of the best backs in football this season, even though Devontae Booker's kind of eating into some of his carries. Actually, in a big way, he's eating into his carries. And then, obviously Bootsy made out with some money. I would say the real winner is Kraus. I thought getting C.J. Anderson and essentially only giving up Ryan Matthews and $2 is a pretty good deal. Another good trade I thought here was Billy getting $3 and Kraus getting Jeremy Hill. Kind of speaking of Kraus being the real winner, I thought this was a big win for him as well. Jeremy Hill is a clear-cut starting running back, and Billy is just kind of floating him away for $3. I know Hill is a little bit up and down, but he had a massive game on Sunday, so way to go, Billy. I guess it's kind of good news for the other bottom feeders like me because it means Billy's team is just that much worse, but, I can't really help but feel bad for Billy here. I mean, I haven't really seen a Boris get butt raped this badly since the time he sold A.J. Green to Kraus for less than the max. I would say the silver lining here, though, is while Anderson and Hill might have had some good weeks, they're now property of Kraus. So it's really only a matter of time until a plane crashes into their living room and kills them. On separate occasions, I could envision that happening actually to both of them. But if you do actually want evidence of the phenomenon of the curse of Kraus, really look no further than his recent acquisition of Geno Smith and then Geno Smith's recent torn ACL. All right, another great trade. Andrew Oakes gets Travis Kelce, and Bootsy gets $2. Bootsy gets an additional $1 for every 25 points Kelce scores through Week 14, capped at $2 max. Oakes gets back $1 if Kelce does not score 3 TDs or 30 points from here through Week 14. All right, so basically the contingency here is it's basically a $2 trade. However, it can jump up to 3 if Kelce puts up 50 points in the next 6 weeks, which is pretty doable. And for a guy like Kelce, you'd think that would happen. Actually, I'm sorry, it jumps up to a $4 trade in that case. And then the contingency coming back is if Kelce doesn't score either 3 touchdowns or 30 points over the next 6 weeks. Bootsy gives $1 back, and it's only a $1 trade. I think that works out fine for Bootsy because obviously if he doesn't hit those numbers, then Kelce ends up being pretty shitty anyway. So this is a pretty smart move by Bootsy. I would say it's, I would be stunned if he didn't put up 30 points. You can't guarantee the 3 touchdowns, but 30 points, you got to figure Kelce's going to have 30 points in 6 weeks, put up 5 points a week. So, anyone can just kind of sell Travis Kelce, but Bootsy managed to write in more legalese into this deal than most of my Windy City Bulls partnership contracts. They should have taken it kind of a step further and based some additional auction compensation on the winner of Travis Kelce's painful Bachelor ripoff reality show on the E! Network. Bet on Oakes gets the blondes and Bootsy gets the kind of half Asian, half black women. All right, now let's get into some of the worst trades, although, you could obviously categorize a majority of these as worst. I've stopped, by the way, explaining any trades in this league to any outside person just because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But starting with the worst, Schaefer. Schaefer's he's going to show up in this list a couple times. He gave 13 auction for Terrell Pryor. Pryor's been pretty solid, but Cleveland's offense is pretty miserable, so I don't really understand why you would want him. Pryor can't be kept. Well, he can be kept, but it's an exorbitant amount, and you wouldn't do it. Although, who knows with Schaefer? Maybe he would. I just don't understand why Schaefer would make this deal. I mean, he really should be desperately trying to scrape together cash to afford his payments on Leonard Fournette at this point and not burning money on Terrell Pryor. Speaking about burning money, Schaefer actually gave another 11 auction to Ariel for Case Keenum. I don't really understand it, Schaefer. I don't see what you're doing here. I guess I sort of didn't really fully process it when it happened, but you're giving away 24 auction dollars for Terrell Pryor and Case Keenum. To what end? I mean, you've got your 5 games back in your division. 3 of your wins came from a Derek Johnson pick 6. It's not going to happen again. And furthermore, I don't know, why don't you inquire into the availability of Jared Goff? Keenum and Goff, now there's a duo worth $24. All right, another bad trade. Oakes getting Matt Jones. Billy gets $7 for Matt Jones. Okay, I don't know. Well, now I'm thrown off a little bit because in the body of the email, Billy's name was written as Bully. I would contend that he is getting bullied in this situation because Matt Jones had a lot of value and $7. I don't know. Although now I don't know. Well, okay. Here's a contingency for this. For every 13 points Jones scores from now through Week 14, Oakes pays Billy $1, rounded to the nearest 13. Additional payment capped at $11. So this is kind of the flavor of the night when it came to the Oakes trades with these future point considerations. it hurts me to put this in the worst category because I do love the contingency, but this trade is pretty shitty. The only thing more boring and shitty than Matt Jones' running style is a stupid name. I mean, seriously, if you had a better name, or at least had the decency to have some kind of weird childhood nickname like Peanut or Funkmaster Flash or something. Matt Jones sucks. He fumbled a few times this week, and so he got benched, and so it looks like he's not going to be scoring too many multiples of 13 points. So money well spent there, Andy. All right, Bootsy gives Jaquiz Rogers to Carlson for $1 and a 2-year contract. Carlson, what the fuck? I know that Jaquiz has been pretty solid. He's gotten a lot of looks, and as a Doug Martin owner, you kind of had to have him. But a 2-year contract, I mean, those things are pretty valuable. You could have kept Luke Kuechly for a good price. He's been the core of your team, or you could potentially extend Tyrod if he starts blowing up and does really well down the stretch. So I know this is your first rodeo, but get it together, man. $1 and a 2-year contract for Jaquiz Rogers, who, I mean, yeah, Doug Martin's been, he's had an injury setback, so Jaquiz will be your starter for the next couple of weeks, but I don't know. It seems like a lot to give up. All right, the last one of the worst trades, Ben getting Tyrell Williams for $3, and if he scores 8+ points this week, I get one more. I assume this is written by Ariel. Ariel gets Hunter Henry for $1, and if he scores 10+, Billy get another $1. Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. I grabbed these straight out of the email, and frankly, I didn't really read them beyond the player names. So whoever wrote this should be ashamed of themselves. Is this trade with Ben or Billy? I think it's with Ben, right? Because Ben had Tyrell Williams. So did Ben negotiate a deal that if Hunter Henry scores 10+ points this week, that Billy would get money just because he's that good of a brother? I don't think so. This is terrible. Shame on whoever wrote this. But basically, seems like the trade is that Ben gets Tyrell Williams for $3 if he scores 8+ points this week. He pays $1 to Ariel, and then Ariel gets Hunter Henry. I believe Hunter Henry did nothing, so I don't think there's any extra compensation there. Tyrell Williams did have a huge week, so it seems like Ariel gets an additional $1 from Ben. This is actually probably, I think, the only contingency that hit so far, or maybe the only one that will hit. Tyrell Williams had a huge week, which ups Ariel's compensation by $1. I think it's actually a fair trade, seemingly executed by two level-headed individuals who were able to negotiate to a reasonable compromise. It's in no way what Tradeapalooza is all about, and so that's why, for starters, this is listed under the worst trades, and frankly, I think it should be reversed. All right, in the irrelevant category, really not that many irrelevant trades this year, which is good. I would say that actually there's really only one, and I was involved with it. It was me giving Tyrod to Carlson for Joe Flacco in 10 auction. I think it's irrelevant because there aren't any hilarious contingencies attached to it for starters, which I obviously should have negotiated in. Secondly, I knew Carlson wouldn't be down, with all the chicanery, so I figured it probably wasn't worth the effort. However, to make up for it, I strung him along on quite possibly the rudest and least empathetic text negotiation in my 30 years on this earth. At the end of the day, though, we were able to make a deal. I think Flacco sucks. He's hurt now as well. Tyrod is decent. I mean, well, he's better than decent. He's pretty good, but he's completely unreliable. You never know when he's going to get hurt. The $10 I profited isn't really enough to make a big difference. So unless Tyrod absolutely blows up and goes crazy for the rest of the year, this trade, it's kind of it's irrelevant. All right, so the big winners of this year's Tradeapalooza were Kraus and Ariel. I thought, as we all know, things can change pretty quickly, especially at Tradeapalooza too. All right, so no power rankings this week. I thought I'd just drop that in there, but we're going to go back to the old mailbag. Got a number of questions in last week and this week, so let's crack it open. First question, Mr. Bauer, do you wash your apples? If so, why? Andrew Denenberg. Not really sure what the hell you're talking about here, Denenberg, or frankly, if you remember writing this email. If you are speaking literally, then the answer is no, I don't wash my apples. I don't really give a shit, and I don't think there's really anything on there that's going to hurt me, so I don't care. If you're speaking metaphorically, then I don't understand. I guess the answer has to be still no. Next question. Dear Azuma Batch, how do you take your Jameson? Neat, on the rocks, or forced upon you by an insistent and well-bevied Oaks? 2. Clam Crowder, New England or Manhattan? And 3. What the hell is an Azuma Batch? Well, Carlson, answering your questions here in order, I drink my whiskey on the rocks. It's not even the water, that I need mixed in there. It's really just the colder temperature. I probably should switch to those whiskey stones that you read about in Sky Mall, but what am I, the Prince of Wales? All right, second question. I like my chowder how I like my crowder, boiling hot and filled with crabs. I prefer your standard New England chowder. Both are delicious. The Manhattan gets a little creepy sometimes with the corn and it's red, I believe, right? But the New England standard clam chowder, that's what I'm talking about. Nothing better than watching my crowder and eating my chowder. And then to your last question, Azuma Batch is a name that has stuck with me since freshman year of high school. Or I'm sorry, freshman year of college. That is obviously if you don't count my embarrassing Perennium Falcon years. It's an amalgam actually of two very important football players to me. The first being Jerry Azuma and the second being Charlie Batch. Jerry Azuma is my favorite Bear of all time. And I've, obviously honored my team with his namesake. And then Charlie Batch was the focus of several wildly offensive comments that I said in front of Oaks' stuffy bitch roommate freshman year when we were doing our draft in the room, and caused him to storm out of the room. In his defense, these were really brutally offensive racial terms that should only be repeated in the presence of Jason Plotzker. All right, next question. Who would you rather be stranded on a desert island with, Krause or Ariel? Are they, in fact, one and the same? Schaefer. Schaefer, I've heard Krause and Ariel called a lot of different things, but never the same. I think probably what you may have been dealing with here when you wrote this email was the pains of negotiating with either one of them on trades. I suppose in that sense they are pretty similar. Both of them very forcefully berate you with multiple texts and emails and G-chats. Both kind of dramatically overvalue their own stock. I would say that Krause, however, has much better etiquette than Ariel does when it comes to conference calls and phone drafting. Seriously, can you guys remember, who could forget that time that Ariel fucked me up so badly during the Calcutta auction that I spent half my life savings on Oregon State? Ariel was trying to negotiate a kidney transplant or something like that. All right, next question. Mailbag. Read all or none of these, depending on how amusing you think the responses will be. I appreciate the discretion there. What would be an appropriate way to punish Dan and Billy, whose combined idiocy led to Ryan Fitzpatrick being kept on a roster last week when he should have been available to pick up? And then, would you care to comment on the rumors that you are extremely potent and Michelle is with child? From Ben Boris. Ben, I'll address the second part of your question first. Yes, Michelle is pregnant. We're having a baby in February. I was pretty sure I had already told everyone this, but I guess maybe not. Maybe I'm confusing it with telling you all about our new house in the suburbs. Frankly, I would think that sort of once I told you all about our house in the suburbs, that maybe you could kind of do the math and figure out that we're having a kid anyways. It does really validate the decision to purchase the home, so we're obviously very excited. We are having a girl in February. After kind of seeing a few of you degenerates in action, I'm forbidding her from ever using dating applications. All right, now to touch on your first point here, let's all take a moment to kind of appreciate what's happening in this email. It's pretty rich. Ben Boris, the man who once had the audacity to sanction me for merely doing what the CBS site allowed for, is asking my opinion on how to punish someone else's indiscretion. Seeing as how I had to kind of pay a fab penalty and roster noted homosexual baseball player Tim Tebow for a few weeks, I think the penalty for Dan and Billy should frankly be no less than death. Seeing as we don't really have the authority to make that happen, they should probably have to both sacrifice a bench spot for a week or something. I don't know, maybe roster someone and waste a bench spot, but it shouldn't really be a problem for Billy, considering he uses his starting roster like a bench and he uses his bench like a fucking homeless shelter. All right, so that's it for the week. No power rankings, as I mentioned, because of Tradeapalooza. But I guess let's just say that Billy is in last and first is Dan. All right, that's it. Go Indians.